I remember it like it was yesterday. I was 26, full of life and not a care in the world, hanging out with a couple of friends at a local bar. That's when Alex walked in. He was a friend of a friend, someone I'd never met before. The moment our eyes met, something clicked. It wasn't love at first sight or anything cheesy like that, but there was a definite spark. "Hey, you must be the famous Alex I've heard so much about," I said, extending my hand with a playful grin. "Famous, huh? Can't say the same about you, but I'm sure I'll remember you after tonight," he shot back, shaking my hand with a firm grip. His smirk was cocky, but there was a twinkle in his eye that made me laugh. We spent the rest of the night talking, joking around, and getting to know each other. It wasn't just the booze talking, we genuinely clicked. Our friends noticed too, nudging each other and giving us knowing looks. "So, what do you do, Erica?" Alex asked, sipping his beer. "I'm stuck in an office job for now. Dreaming of bigger things, though. What about you?" I replied, rolling my eyes at my own situation. "I work in sales. It's alright, pays the bills. But like you, I've got bigger plans," he said with a shrug, as if it wasn't a big deal. The night flew by, and before I knew it, it was time to head home. Alex offered to walk me to my car, a gentlemanly gesture that surprised me given his earlier cockiness. "Hey, I had a really good time tonight. Can I see you again?" he asked, almost hesitantly, as we reached my car. I smiled, feeling the butterflies in my stomach. "I'd like that. But only if you promise to tone down the cockiness a bit." He laughed, the sound warm and genuine. "Deal. But you've got to promise to keep up with my witty banter." "Deal," I said, shaking his hand again. This time, it felt like an agreement on more than just another meetup. It felt like the beginning of something special. We exchanged numbers, and I drove home with a silly grin plastered on my face. I couldn't stop thinking about him. There was something about Alex that felt right, like a puzzle piece I didn't know was missing. Over the next few days, we texted nonstop. Our conversations were filled with jokes, teasing, and getting to know each other on a deeper level. It was refreshing to meet someone who could match my sass and not get offended. A week later, we went on our first official date. It was nothing fancy, just dinner at a local diner, but it was perfect. We talked about everything and nothing, from our dreams and ambitions to our favorite TV shows. "You know, I never thought I'd meet someone like you in a place like this," Alex said, his tone serious for once. "Yeah? What's that supposed to mean?" I teased, raising an eyebrow. "It means, I'm glad I came to that bar that night. I'm glad I met you," he said, reaching across the table to take my hand. I felt a warmth spread through me. "Me too, Alex. Me too." That night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't help but feel like my life was about to change. Little did I know just how much it would. Meeting Alex was the start of a journey, one that would bring laughter, tears, and challenges. But at that moment, all I knew was that I had met someone special, someone who could potentially be my partner in crime, my confidant, my friend. And maybe, just maybe, something more. The days that followed were a whirlwind of emotions and excitement. Every text, every call, every date felt like a step closer to something undefined but undoubtedly special. Alex was different from anyone I'd ever met. He was real, raw, and refreshingly honest. He didn't put up a front or try to impress me with grand gestures. He was just himself, and that was more than enough. Our banter was endless, and it was during these moments of playful disagreement that I found myself falling for him. It wasn't just about the laughter and the jokes, it was the comfort and ease I felt around him. I could be my true self, and he not only accepted that, he embraced it. As the weeks turned into months, our connection deepened. We shared our dreams, our pasts, and our hopes for the future. Alex became not just a significant part of my life, but a part of me. I couldn't imagine my days without him, without our talks, without his presence. And so, a year after that fateful meeting at the bar, We made a decision that would forever change our lives. We decided to get married. It wasn't a decision we took lightly, but one that felt natural, like the next step in our journey together. Life took a turn when Emma was born. I stepped into the role of a stay-at-home mom with open arms, a decision Alex and I agreed upon. But as the days turned into months, and months into years, I noticed a shift in Alex. The man I fell in love with, who used to make me laugh until my sides hurt, was fading away, replaced by someone I hardly recognized. "Another day, another mess, Erica," Alex muttered, stepping over toys scattered across the living room floor after a long day at work. His tone, once filled with warmth, now dripped with disdain. I looked up from where I was sitting, trying to sort through bills and manage our household finances, a task that had become increasingly challenging. "Emma's just being a kid, Alex. I'll clean it up in a bit," I said, attempting to keep the peace. "Maybe if you did more around here, I wouldn't come back to a pigsty every evening," he snapped, his frustration evident. His words stung. I spent my days chasing after our energetic 5-year-old, trying to keep our home in order, and yet, it was never enough. "I'm doing the best I can," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper, the fight draining out of me. "Your best? That's a laugh. Look at you, what do you even do all day?" Alex scoffed, his gaze scanning over me in a way that made me shrink back. I bit my lip, fighting back tears. This wasn't the Alex I knew. "I take care of our daughter, our home." "I'm trying, Alex." He shook his head, disappointment etched across his face. "Trying? You call this trying? You've let yourself go, and this place, it's a mess. I work all day, and I come back to this." I wanted to scream, to argue, to defend myself, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I turned my attention back to the bills, a lump in my throat. Silence filled the room, the tension thick. The next morning, I tried to shake off the hurt from our conversation. Emma needed me, and I refused to let Alex's harsh words dampen my spirits in front of her. We were in the kitchen, her laughter filling the space as I made pancakes, a temporary reprieve from the tension. "You're the best, Mommy," Emma said, her smile bright and genuine. I ruffled her hair, grateful for her innocent joy. "Thanks, sweetie. You make everything better." But the brief moment of happiness was shattered when Alex walked in, his expression sour. "Pancakes on a weekday? What are you trying to do, spoil her? And make us all late?" I sighed, bracing myself for another argument. "It's just pancakes, Alex. It won't hurt." He grabbed a coffee, his eyes rolling. "Whatever. Just make sure she's ready on time. I don't need to be late because of your little cooking show." As he left the room, Emma's smile faded, replaced by confusion. "Daddy's mad again?" I forced a smile, not wanting her to worry. "Daddy's just tired, honey. Eat your pancakes, okay?" The day Alex announced his business trip felt like a reprieve, a chance to breathe without walking on eggshells. But even that was marred by his parting words. "Keep the house clean while I'm gone. And try not to waste all my money," he said, suitcase in hand, not even bothering to look at me. "I'll manage," I replied, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "We'll be fine." He shrugged, indifferent. "Yeah, well, we'll see about that." Watching him leave, I felt a mix of relief and sadness. This wasn't the life I envisioned when we said "I do." The love, the partnership, it all seemed like a distant memory, overshadowed by resentment and misunderstandings. In a house filled with tension and cold silences, I found my old brushes and paints one day, buried under years of neglected dreams. It felt like a lifetime ago since I last held them in my hands, back when I was a bright-eyed girl at the art studio, with my teacher telling me I had a future in painting. But life, as it often does, took me down a different path. I studied economics, a practical choice, and my canvases gathered dust. Painting again felt like a breath of fresh air, a momentary escape from the endless cycle of chores and Alex's growing indifference. Each stroke on the canvas was a whisper of the person I used to be, someone who had dreams and aspirations beyond these four walls. Really, Erica? Painting? What are you, 12? Alex's voice cut through my moment of peace one evening as he caught me setting up my easel in the living room. His parents were visiting, and they all stood there, staring at my setup like it was a joke. I bit my lip, feeling the familiar sting of embarrassment. I used to love painting, I managed to say, trying to defend my old passion. His mother snorted, looking over my shoulder at the half-finished canvas. Looks like a child's work. Wouldn't it be better if you did something useful instead? Alex joined in with a cruel laugh. Yeah, like maybe getting a job instead of wasting money on this nonsense. I felt my face flush with shame, the joy of painting souring in my mouth. I thought it might be nice to have something of my own. I whispered, more to myself than to them. Of your own? With what money? You're spending my hard-earned cash on this garbage? Alex's tone was sharp, his words like daggers. I use my savings, I replied quietly, my defense weak against his growing anger. Savings? What savings? From before we married? That's cute. Listen, because of your little hobby, I'm going to have to cut the budget around here. Can't have you blowing through my salary on your art, he said, the last word dripping with disdain. His parents nodded in agreement, their looks of disapproval etching deeper into my heart. I wanted to scream, to argue that it was my money too, that I had every right to find some joy in my life. But the words died in my throat, the fight drained out of me by years of being belittled and dismissed. From that day on, I kept my painting to myself, a secret refuge from the storms outside. I bought my supplies with what little money I could squirrel away, each canvas and tube of paint a tiny rebellion against the life I felt trapped in. Painting became my silent protest, my way of holding on to the parts of me that still dreamed of something more. The tension in the house could cut through steel when Alex's parents showed up. They never missed a chance to point out everything they thought I was doing wrong. Can't you even make a decent cup of coffee? His dad grumbled as I handed him a mug. I forced a smile, trying not to let the comment get to me. His mom wasn't any kinder. This breakfast, you call this special? Back in my day, we knew how to treat guests. Her nose turned up at the eggs and bacon I'd spent the last hour preparing. I bit my tongue, keeping the retort that was dancing on its tip at bay. I'm sorry you feel that way. I'll try to do better, I mumbled, feeling anything but sorry. As if on cue, Alex called. I excused myself, hoping for a brief escape from the criticism. But the call wasn't the respite I hoped for. Listen, I need you to get something for my boss's wife. Her birthday is coming up. Alex's voice was brisk, all business. I blinked, taken aback. Alex, I don't really have the budget for. I don't want to hear it. Figure it out. It's important. He cut me off, his tone final. And with that, he hung up. I stared at the phone, stunned. Solve it myself? With what? Magic? Frustration bubbled up, but it was quickly overshadowed by worry. I couldn't mess this up. Not for Alex. In desperation, I turned to the internet, scrolling through the boss's wife's social media for any hint of a suitable gift. That's when I stumbled upon her interest in painting and support for aspiring artists. It was a light bulb moment. I couldn't afford a fancy gift, but maybe, just maybe, I could create something personal. Something meaningful. I decided right then, I'd paint her something. It felt like a solid plan, but I kept it to myself. Alex was already on edge, and I didn't need his scoffing or doubts. No, this would be my secret project. A chance to prove, if only to myself, that I could contribute something valuable. That I was more than the freeloader his parents saw or the inadequate wife Alex seemed to think I was. During that week, my apartment turned into a mini art studio. I was focused on creating something beautiful, something that would stand out. Beside me, I set up a tiny easel for Emma, my daughter, who was thrilled to join in. She decided to draw a portrait of me, her concentration face on, tongue poking out slightly as she worked. It was a mess of colors, but to me, it was perfect. Alex was away, wrapped up in his work, clueless about the plan brewing back home. When he finally called, it was just to confirm that we'd meet at his boss's wife's birthday bash. "Make sure you dress nicely," he added, as if I needed reminding. "Yeah, got it," I replied, my mind already racing through my wardrobe for the right outfit. It wasn't just about looking good, it was about feeling confident, something I hadn't felt in a while. The day of the party arrived quickly. I stood in front of the mirror, slipping into a dress that made me feel like myself again. It had been so long since I dressed up for anything. Emma watched, her eyes wide. "Mommy, you look like a princess," she exclaimed. I laughed, bending down to give her a hug. "Thank you, sweetie. Mommy has to go now, but I'll be back soon, okay?" Emma nodded, clutching the portrait she made of me. "Good luck, Mommy. Give your painting to the lady." With a deep breath, I grabbed my painting, now beautifully wrapped, and headed out. The drive to the mansion was a blur of nerves and anticipation. As I parked and stepped out, the enormity of the house hit me. It was more like a palace, with lights illuminating the grand architecture. I paused at the entrance, taking a moment to gather my courage. Inside, the sounds of laughter and music floated out, a world so different from my own. It wasn't just about giving a gift anymore, it was about proving to myself that I could stand tall in this crowd, that I was more than just Alex's wife or a stay-at-home mom. With a final deep breath, I stepped inside, my head held high, ready to face whatever came my way. This was it, the moment of truth. I was ready to join this society, to show them and myself what I was capable of. Stepping into the grandiose hall of the boss's mansion, the chandeliers overhead and the murmur of high society filled the air. I hadn't taken 2 steps before Alex found me, his eyes scanning me up and down with a frown. "What are you wearing, Erica? Look around you, do you see anyone else dressed like that? You stick out like a sore thumb," he hissed, not even bothering to hide his disappointment. I glanced around, noticing the elegant dresses and perfectly coiffed hair of the other women. I felt out of place, my confidence wavering under his critical gaze. "I thought I looked okay," I muttered, feeling small. Before I could defend myself further, he noticed the wrapped canvas under my arm. "Don't tell me that's what I think it is. You didn't." I nodded, clutching the painting a bit tighter. "It's a gift for your boss's wife. I thought she'd like it." Alex's face turned red, his anger palpable. "You thought? Are you a fool? This is a disaster. You're going to embarrass me in front of everyone with your amateur art." His words stung, but before I could respond, his loud complaints caught the attention of the very people we were talking about. The boss and his wife approached, curiosity and concern mixing on their faces. "What's all this about, Alex?" his boss asked, eyebrows raised. Alex, trying to regain composure, forced a laugh. "Oh, nothing much. My wife here thought it'd be a good idea to gift your wife one of her paintings. I tried to tell her it's not appropriate, but you know how it is." The guests around us snickered, their eyes on me, waiting to see my next move. The boss's wife, however, seemed intrigued. "I'd love to see it. I appreciate all forms of art," she said, her voice kind and encouraging. With trembling hands, I unwrapped the painting, revealing my work. The room fell silent as everyone waited for her reaction. The boss's wife studied the painting, her eyes moving over every detail. Then, her face broke into a genuine smile. "This is wonderful. Truly, you have a gift. How thoughtful of you to create something so personal." Alex's mouth hung open, his earlier bravado gone. The guests, too, were taken aback, their laughter dying down as they realized their mistake. I'm glad you like it," I stammered, a mix of relief and pride washing over me. The boss clapped Alex on the back, a knowing look in his eyes. "Looks like your wife knows how to make an impression, Alex. Well done." As the crowd dispersed, some throwing me impressed looks, Alex stood there, his earlier criticisms unspoken now. The boss's wife, intrigued by my unexpected gift, led me away from the bustling party to a quieter part of the mansion. The walls of this secluded room were adorned with an impressive array of paintings, each telling its own story. As we moved from one piece to the next, our conversation flowed effortlessly, delving into techniques, styles, and the stories behind the canvases. "I'm quite surprised," she admitted, her eyes reflecting genuine interest. "You understand art deeply, Erica. Ever thought of organizing your own exhibition?" Her question caught me off guard, sending waves of embarrassment and excitement through me. "Me? An exhibition? I wouldn't even know where to start," I stammered, the idea seeming as distant as the stars. It was then Alex found us, his timing as impeccable as ever. Overhearing the tail end of our conversation, he laughed, the sound harsh and unwelcome. "An exhibition? For what? Her kitty scribbles? Come on, let's go home. This party's over for us." The boss's wife's expression shifted from warm to cold in an instant, clearly not pleased with Alex's interruption or his demeaning words. I felt a rush of embarrassment, but also a spark of defiance. For once, I wasn't going to let his words dictate how I felt about myself or my art. "No, Alex," I said, my voice steady, stronger than I felt. "I'm not going home. Not yet. I want to explore this idea, my own exhibition." His face turned a shade of red I hadn't seen before, his eyes wide in disbelief. Without another word, he stormed off, leaving a trail of awkward silence behind him. The drive home later that night was a battle between elation and dread. I had stood up for myself, but at what cost? As soon as I stepped through the door, Alex was there, his anger boiling over. "You've embarrassed me. In front of my boss, my colleagues. What were you thinking?" he yelled, pacing back and forth. I took a deep breath, my decision made in the clarity of his tirade. "I was thinking about my future, Alex. A future where I'm more than just your wife, more than a housekeeper. If that embarrasses you, then maybe we shouldn't be together." His ranting stopped, his face a mix of confusion and shock. "What are you saying? You want a divorce? Over some stupid paintings?" "Yes, Alex. A divorce," I said, the words feeling surreal even as they left my mouth. "I can't live like this anymore. Being belittled, feeling trapped. I want more from life, and if that means without you, then so be it." The silence that followed was deafening. Alex stood there, staring at me as if seeing me for the first time. The man who had left in a huff at the party was now the one in shock, unsure of what to do next. After deciding to divorce Alex, I braced myself for a storm, but nothing could have prepared me for the hurricane that ensued. The divorce was messy, to say the least. Alex turned it into a battlefield, contesting every single detail. He didn't want to part with a penny, especially when it came to alimony for Emma, our daughter. He even tried to keep most of our shared assets, leaving me to fight tooth and nail for what was rightfully half mine. The whole debacle wasn't just confined to family and close friends, it spilled over into Alex's professional life. His colleagues and even his boss caught wind of his less-than-stellar behavior during our divorce. The man who prided himself on his impeccable reputation at work saw it tarnished. Before long, whispers of his pettiness and vindictiveness led to his demotion. It was a steep fall from grace for someone who had always put his career above everything else. In the midst of this turmoil, an unexpected ally emerged, Alex's boss's wife. She fulfilled her promise and organized my first personal exhibition. It was an opportunity one never dreamed of, a silver lining in the dark cloud that had loomed over my life. With her guidance and support, my paintings found an audience. People were drawn to my work, seeing stories and emotions in my brush strokes. I held several solo exhibitions, each more successful than the last. My paintings began to sell, not just to friends and acquaintances, but to strangers who felt a connection to my art. The money I earned from my paintings allowed Emma and me to move into a nice apartment, a place we could call our own. It was a fresh start, a chance to rebuild our lives on our terms. Looking back, I never imagined my life taking such a turn. The pain of the divorce and the ugliness that came with it seemed insurmountable at the time. But through it all, I discovered my strength, my passion, and my ability to stand on my own. As I sit in our new living room, surrounded by canvases and paint, I can't help but feel optimistic about the future. For the first time in a long time, I'm excited about what lies ahead. Emma, now thriving in a happier, healthier environment, is my constant reminder that we made it through the storm. Hey, I'm Kate. My story ain't like the ones you're used to. It's a bit rough around the edges, kinda like me, I guess. See, I was 5 when my dad decided he'd had enough. Just up and left one day. My mom, Clara, well, she didn't take it too well. Can't say I blame her, but I sure as hell got the short end of the stick. Kate, do your damn chores. Clara's voice would cut through the silence of our small, cluttered house like a knife. She had this way of making me feel like I was nothing but a burden. I'm doing them, Mom. I'd shoot back, trying to keep my voice steady. I learned early on that talking back only made things worse, but sometimes I couldn't help myself. She'd just scoff, muttering something about me being just as useless as my dad. That stung. I didn't even remember him that well, but according to Clara, I was his spitting image, a constant, living reminder of the man who left us. Most days, she'd be out, trying to scrape together a life for us, or that's what she claimed. I spent a lot of nights alone, or worse, with her friends who barely tolerated my presence. Keep an eye on Kate, she'd say, as if I was some pet she couldn't be bothered to care for. The few times she was home, affection was in short supply. A head pat here, a distracted there as I tried to tell her about my day. It was like talking to a wall. One evening, I tried to hug her. I just wanted to feel like her daughter, you know? She stiffened up and pushed me away. What do you want now? She snapped, eyeing me like I'd asked for the moon. Nothing, I mumbled, stepping back. I learned to stop asking for hugs after that. School wasn't much better. I was the quiet kid, the one with the hand-me-down clothes, and the absent mom at every parent-teacher meeting. Why's your mom never here, Kate? The other kids would ask. What was I supposed to say? That she didn't care? One day, Clara came home in a foul mood, worse than usual. She'd had a fight with one of her friends, the kind that was supposed to watch me, but just let me fend for myself. Why can't you be more like other kids, Kate? Look at you, sitting there with your stupid books. You're just like your father, a complete waste of space. I bit my lip, holding back tears. Arguing would only make it worse. Sorry, Mom, was all I could say, even though I didn't understand what I was apologizing for. That night, I lay in bed, listening to the silence of the house. It was overwhelming, the feeling of being so unloved, so unwanted. I promised myself that one day, things would be different. I wouldn't end up bitter and alone like Clara. I didn't know how I'd make it happen, but I had to believe there was more to life than this. Then Mark came along. Mom married him in a whirlwind, and suddenly, we were a family again. But when Lily was born, it was as if I became invisible, a ghost wandering the halls of a house that no longer felt like home. Kate, look at your sister. Why can't you be more like her? Mom would often say, her gaze fixed on Lily with a warmth I hadn't seen in years. I tried to remember the last time she'd looked at me like that, but came up empty. I shrugged, attempting to ignore the sting of her words. What do you mean, Mom? She sighed, a sound of frustration and disappointment. Lily's so put together, so delicate. And you? You're always in those baggy clothes, hiding who knows what. You could be pretty if you tried. Mark would sometimes interject, a gentle mediator in our stormy household. Clara, Kate's fine the way she is. She's smart, kind. But Mom would cut him off, her voice cold. I'm talking to my daughter, Mark. Stay out of this. The divide between Lily and me grew as she embraced her role as the cherished child. She knew she was the favorite and used it to her advantage, sabotaging me with a smile on her face. "Mom, Kate won't share her makeup with me," Lily would lie, knowing full well I had barely enough for myself. "I bought that for both of you," Mom would snap at me, without bothering to check the truth. "Why do you always have to be so selfish?" But I'd start, only to be silenced by a look. Mark, bless his heart, tried to make peace, but his efforts were often in vain. One evening, as I helped Lily with her homework, she deliberately knocked her glass of juice over my papers. "Oops," she said, not a hint of remorse in her voice. "Lily, apologize to your sister," Mark said firmly, witnessing the scene. Lily pouted, turning her manipulation skills on. "I didn't mean to, Daddy." "I'm sorry, Kate," she lied, her apology as empty as her gaze. Mom walked in at the tail end, her eyes darting between us. Without missing a beat, she sided with Lily. "Kate, can't you see she's sorry? Stop making a scene and clean this up." Frustration boiling within me, I cleaned up the mess, the injustice of it all burning in my chest. It was always the same, Lily's word against mine, and I was always the villain in Mom's eyes. One day, feeling a mix of desperation and longing for a connection, I called Mark Dad in a moment of vulnerability. It slipped out, natural as breathing, but the fallout was immediate and harsh. Mom's face twisted into a mask of fury. "How dare you? You have a father, Kate, and Mark is not him. You're just trying to replace him because he didn't want you." Her words were like a physical blow, knocking the air from my lungs. Mark looked stricken, caught between his wife and stepdaughter, a silent witness to my humiliation. My voice broke, the hurt too deep for tears. I thought. What? That you could just pretend everything's okay? That you could make us a perfect little family? Mom's voice was venomous, each word a pointed dagger aimed straight at my heart. In the end, I retreated to my room, the sound of Lily's laughter echoing behind me. I was the outsider, the unwanted, living in a house divided by favoritism and silent battles. Mark tried to offer solace, but his kindness was a balm on a wound too deep to heal. Growing up wasn't easy, not by a long shot. As I hit my teen years, things at home went from bad to downright miserable. Mom's critiques got harsher, and Lily, well, she was blossoming into a mini tyrant, with Mom as her biggest cheerleader. One afternoon, I was trying on clothes in my room, the door barely cracked open. I could hear Lily's snickers from the hallway. "Look at Kate, trying to dress up. Like putting lipstick on a pig," she jeered, not even bothering to lower her voice. I flinched, the sting of her words hitting harder than I wanted to admit. "Shut up, Lily," I snapped back, more hurt than angry. Mom's voice cut through the tension like a hot knife. "Kate, don't talk to your sister like that. And Lily's right, you know. Those clothes do nothing for you." I stood there, a mix of anger and humiliation washing over me. I wanted to scream, to tell them both off, but I knew it would only make things worse. Mark wandered in, oblivious to the brewing storm. "What's all the noise about?" he asked, looking between us. "Lily's just being her usual charming self," I muttered, my voice dripping with sarcasm. Mark sighed, a look of resignation on his face. "Girls, can't we all just get along for once? Tell her to stop picking on me, then," Lily whined, playing the victim like she always did. "I'm not the one starting things," I protested, but it fell on deaf ears. Mark just shook his head and walked away, leaving me to fend for myself yet again. The next day at school, I overheard some kids talking about a party. For a fleeting moment, I entertained the idea of going, of being normal, for a change. But then reality crashed back in. I couldn't bring anyone home. Mom would make sure any friend or boy I liked would run for the hills with her comments. One evening, Mom was on one of her tirades about my appearance. "You could be pretty if you actually tried, Kate. Look at Lily, she takes care of herself." I was at my breaking point. "Why do you always compare me to her? I'm not Lily." Mom just rolled her eyes. Because she sets a good example. You could learn a lot from your sister. The words felt like a slap in the face. It was always Lily, always about how perfect she was and how I just couldn't measure up. I stormed off, my heart pounding in my chest. Alone in my room, I let the tears come. It was clear I was the odd one out in this family, the constant disappointment. And no matter how hard I tried, it felt like it would never be enough. Finding love should have been exciting, right? For most people, maybe, but for me, it felt like walking through a minefield blindfolded. After everything at home, I was hungry for a bit of tenderness, something real and warm. But every time I thought I found it, boom, everything blew up in my face. I met Jake at work. He was funny, had a killer smile, and didn't seem to mind my awkwardness. We hit it off, and for a minute there, I thought, hey, maybe this could be it. One night, I decided to bring him home, thinking it'd be safe. Big mistake. Kate, who's this? Mom asked, eyeing Jake like he was some bug she found under the sink. This is Jake, Mom. We work together, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Jake reached out, all polite and smiling. Nice to meet you, ma'am. Mom just nodded, her smile tight. Once we sat down, it started. It was like she had a radar for my vulnerabilities. So, Jake, Kate's not much of a looker, but she's got a good heart, I suppose. Keeps her room clean. That's something, right? Mom's voice was all sweet poison, her words slathered in fake honey. I could feel my cheeks burning, my heart sinking. Jake looked at me, confusion and pity in his eyes. That look, it just about killed me. Actually, I think Kate's great. Really smart and funny, Jake said, trying to defend me, but Mom wasn't having it. Oh, sure. But you know, boys always gotta be careful. Girls like Kate, they get clingy, think every date means wedding bells. Mom went on, each word a dagger. The evening couldn't end fast enough. Jake left, and so did any hope of us. He was cool at work, but distant. Couldn't blame him. Who'd want to dive into that hot mess? It wasn't just Jake. There was Tom, Darren, and a few others. Different faces, same story. Mom would either scare them off with her warnings, or Lily would do her part, spilling some made-up scandal about me. I stopped bringing guys home after that. Started meeting them outside, but the damage was done. My confidence was shot. Every date felt like a ticking time bomb, waiting for the moment they'd find out about my crazy family and bail. One night, after another failed date, I came home to find Mark sitting in the living room, alone. Rough night? He asked, the TV casting shadows on his tired face. Yeah, you could say that, I replied, slumping down beside him. Kate, you're a catch, you know that? Any guy would be lucky to have you, Mark said, sincere as always. I wanted to believe him, really, I did. But belief was a luxury I couldn't afford. Not with Mom and Lily always there, ready to remind me I wasn't enough. Thanks, Mark. Just gotta keep looking, right? I forced a smile, but inside, I was crumbling. Yeah, keep looking. He's out there, Kate. Someone who'll see you for the amazing person you are, Mark encouraged, his optimism a faint light in the darkness. I nodded, not really convinced, but grateful for Mark's belief in me. Maybe one day, I'd find someone who looked past the mess, saw me, and stayed. Until then, I'd keep searching, hoping for a love that could withstand the chaos of my life. A few years down the road, and here I am, Kate, at 27, carving out a slice of life for myself. I've got a decent job as an economist at this big company, and I've been living in my little slice of independence, a small apartment that's all mine. But the real game changer? Meeting Alex. He's not just some guy, he's the guy. The one I can actually picture the whole "till death do us part" scenario with. One evening, lounging on my thrift store couch, Alex turned to me, his eyes serious, but kind. Kate, I think it's time we introduce each other to our folks. I mean, if we're serious about this, and I know I am, they should know, right? My stomach did a somersault. Meeting his folks? Sure. My family? That's a whole different ball game. Alex, you know I'm all in with you, but my family, it's complicated. He took my hand, his thumb brushing against mine. Hey, we all have our brand of crazy at home. How bad can it be? I sighed, spilling the beans about the whole ordeal with Mom and Lily, leaving out no gritty detail. Surprisingly, he didn't bolt. Instead, he squeezed my hand tighter. We'll face them together, he said, and just like that, I felt a bit braver. So, I bit the bullet and called Mark. Out of everyone, he's been a steady rock in the shifting sands of my family drama. Mark, I've got news. I'm seeing someone, Alex, and we're engaged. There was a pause, and then, Kate, that's fantastic. When do we get to meet him? Mark's enthusiasm was like a warm blanket. He didn't skip a beat, jumping straight to when, not if. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. Soon, Mark. I'm a bit on edge about Mom and Lily. Don't you worry. I'll smooth things over on this end. Just bring that young man over. It's about time there was some good news around here. Hanging up, I turned to Alex, who'd been watching me with a mix of curiosity and concern. Well, Mark's on board. Looks like we're doing this. He grinned, pulling me into a hug. See? Step 1, down. We'll handle the rest just fine. But as the day approached, I couldn't shake off the nerves. Meeting Alex's folks went better than I could have hoped. They were warm, welcoming, everything you'd want in potential in-laws. It gave me a sliver of hope, maybe too much. Now, as I paced the length of my living room, I tried to muster that same hope for the upcoming dinner at my family's house. Alex, ever the optimist, assured me it'd be all right, but deep down, I knew the storm that was brewing. It was going to be a showdown, my past against my future. But with Alex by my side, I felt a tad more courageous. Still, I couldn't help but run through every possible scenario, each ending more dramatic than the last. Kate, it'll be okay, Alex said, catching me mid-pace and pulling me into his arms. Whatever happens, we're in it together. The air was thick as Alex and I approached my mom's house, both of us bracing for what was coming. Little did we know, the evening had a twist in store. Kate, Alex, finally. Mom greeted us at the door, her usual frostiness replaced by a warmth that felt out of place. As soon as we were settled and introductions were out of the way, the bomb dropped. So, Alex, Kate tells me you're quite the big shot, director of your company and all, Mom said, her eyes lighting up in a way I hadn't seen in years. Alex, ever humble, just nodded. Well, I wouldn't say big shot, but yeah, I've worked my way up. That's all it took. Suddenly, Mom was all smiles and praises, hanging on Alex's every word. The transformation was almost comical if it wasn't so painfully obvious. Dinner was served, and the atmosphere had done a complete 180. Mom was laying it on thick, every other sentence aimed at showcasing how wonderful our family was, especially Lily. Lily's just been accepted into the honors program at school, Mom boasted, shooting a look at Alex as if to say, see, we're a family of achievers. Lily ate up the attention, adding her own embellishments. Yeah, I've always been top of my class. I guess it runs in the family. I couldn't help but roll my eyes. Alex gave my hand a squeeze under the table, a silent show of solidarity. Mark, bless him, tried to keep things balanced, mentioning some of my achievements, but Mom steamrolled over him, redirecting the conversation back to Lily and, whenever possible, Alex's impressive career. As the night wore on, Mom's tactics became even more transparent. She was laying the groundwork, trying to cement a bond with Alex, presumably to ensure her place in what she saw as our newfound fortune. Alex, you must come from a very driven family. It's so important, don't you think, to instill those values in our children? Mom said, her gaze flitting between Alex and Lily. Alex, to his credit, handled it with grace. Absolutely. Hard work and integrity go a long way, he replied, deliberately including me in the conversation with a look. As we made our excuses to leave, Mom was all but hanging off Alex, insisting we visit more often. You must come for dinner again soon, Alex. It's been such a pleasure, she gushed, practically ignoring me as we said our goodbyes. Once in the car, Alex let out a low whistle. Wow, that was something else. Your mom really knows how to lay it on thick. I sighed, leaning back in my seat. Yeah, sorry about that. She sees what she wants to see. Alex took my hand, giving it a reassuring squeeze. Hey, we're in this together, remember? No amount of schmoozing from your mom can change that. The day after the dinner, I was still reeling from Mom's performance when my phone buzzed. It was Alex, and he sounded weird, like he was trying to stay calm but was struggling. Kate, you're not gonna believe this. Your mom, she called me. Alex started, his voice tight. I froze. Called you? How did she even get your number? He sighed. Found it on some work documents you left at their place, I guess. But listen, what she said, it's insane. My heart sank. What did she say, Alex? She asked me to leave you. To marry Lily instead. He blurted out, and I could almost hear his disbelief through the phone. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. She what? The words felt surreal, like we were talking about someone else's life, not ours. Yeah, I know. It's messed up. But Kate, I have an idea. We can expose her, show everyone what she's really like, Alex said, a determined edge to his voice. Fast forward, and I'm sitting in a cafe, wig and sunglasses on, heart pounding as I watch Alex and my mom at a nearby table. The conversation flows, with my mom laying out her absurd proposal like she's negotiating a business deal, unaware of the dictaphone hidden in Alex's jacket. As the meeting wraps up, my mom leaves the cafe, all smiles and confidence. I watch her go, shaking my head. This was a woman I no longer recognized, a stranger wearing my mother's face. Alex joined me, his face a mix of concern and anger. You okay, Kate? I looked up at him, my decision clear. Yeah, I'm okay. Let's go home. We have a wedding to plan. The day had come for truths to be laid bare, for masks to fall off, revealing the raw reality underneath. I walked into my parents' house, not as the Kate they thought they could manipulate, but as someone who had seen through their deceit. As I stepped in, my mom greeted me with a smug smile, one that made my stomach churn. Well, look who decided to show up. Too bad Alex won't be joining us anymore, right? He's chosen Lily over you. She gloated, her voice dripping with false pity. Mark, standing beside her, looked confused, his eyes shifting between Mom, Lily, and me. What's going on here? He asked, his voice heavy with concern. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I locked eyes with Alex, who had followed me in. We shared a silent nod, a mutual agreement that it was time to end this charade. Actually, Mom, Alex is here, I said, stepping aside to reveal him. Mom's face faltered, her confidence slipping for a moment, before she masked it with indifference. The room was heavy with anticipation as Alex hit play on the recorder. My heart was racing, knowing the weight of what was about to be heard. As my mother's voice filled the room, you could feel the atmosphere shift. I never loved Kate, her voice echoed, each word a dagger. And Mark, I married him for his money, nothing more. The recording stopped, but its impact lingered, heavy and suffocating. The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of my stepfather's voice, strained and full of hurt. I can't believe this, Mark finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper but carrying a storm of emotions. His gaze shifted from the recorder to my mother, seeking some denial, some sign of remorse. But there was none. Mark stood up, his decision clear in his hardened gaze. That's it. I'm done. I want a divorce. he declared, his voice stronger now, resolved. You need to leave the house. The fallout was immediate. Accusations flew, tears were shed, and the fabric of our family was irreparably torn. My mother and Lily, united in their scheme, were now facing the consequences of their actions, isolated by their own greed and deceit. As for me, standing there amidst the chaos, I felt a strange sense of peace. The truth, as painful as it was, had set me free from the web of lies that had ensnared our lives for too long. In the weeks that followed, I focused on rebuilding, on planning a future with Alex, one based on trust and love. We got married in a small, intimate ceremony, surrounded by friends and those who truly cared for us. Mark was there, his presence a symbol of the family ties that still held, despite everything. Mom and Lily? I made the difficult decision to cut ties. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary for my peace of mind, for my happiness. As Alex and I stood together, hand in hand, I realized that this was just the beginning. A new chapter, free from the shadows of the past, ready to face whatever came our way, together. Growing up in a rural area meant life was pretty straightforward for me and my older brother, Jack. We were the kind of family that stuck together through thick and thin, a principle drilled into us by our parents from the get-go. Our home wasn't much to look at, a modest farmhouse with peeling paint and creaky floorboards, but it was filled with love and laughter, making it a sanctuary for both of us. Our dad was a man of few words, preferring to let his actions speak for him. He worked the fields from dawn till dusk, his hands as rough as the soil he tended to. Mom, on the other hand, was the heart of our home. Her laughter was infectious, and she had a way of making even the simplest meals taste like gourmet feasts. Jack was always the competitive one, always aiming to be first, whether it was reaching the dinner table or finishing chores. "Beat ya again, sis," he'd boast, a wide grin plastered on his face, his eyes twinkling with mischief. "Only 'cause you cheat," I'd retort, my hands on my hips, trying to look annoyed but failing miserably. We'd bicker back and forth, but it was all in good fun. School was a mixed bag for us. I loved the learning, soaking up knowledge like a sponge, while Jack was more interested in anything that didn't involve sitting still for too long. It was during these formative years that I realized I wanted something different for myself. I loved our home, but I yearned to see what was beyond the fields and fences that made up our world. College was my ticket out, a chance to explore and grow. When the acceptance letter arrived, it was a moment of mixed emotions. Mom was over the moon, proud as could be, while Dad gave me one of his rare smiles, his eyes saying what his mouth couldn't. Jack, though, was harder to read. "You sure about this, Sarah?" he asked one evening as we sat on the porch, watching the sun dip below the horizon. His voice was gruff, the words heavy with unspoken concern. "Yeah, I am," I replied, my voice steady, but my heart racing. I need to see what's out there, you know?" Jack nodded, the silence stretching between us. "Just don't forget where you come from, all right? These fields, this house, it's part of who you are." "I won't, I promise," I assured him, the weight of his words settling on my shoulders. It was a promise I intended to keep, no matter how far I roamed. College was a blur of studies and newfound freedoms, a stark contrast to the life I had left behind. Upon graduation, the thought of returning to that simple, rural life was overshadowed by the opportunities that lay in the city. I took a job and settled into my grandmother's house, a cozy little place that felt like a piece of home in the midst of urban chaos. The Harrisons, an elderly couple with hearts as wide as the fields back home, lived beside my grandmother's house, which I now called my own. Their granddaughter, Lily, lived with them, a city girl through and through, her world seemingly a universe apart from mine. Jack and Lily's whirlwind romance caught us all off guard, especially me. I wanted to be happy for them, really, I did. But Lily and I, well, we mixed like oil and water from the get-go. One evening, during a family dinner I hosted at my grandmother's house, the tension reached a boiling point. I had spent hours preparing the meal, eager to bring a piece of home to the city. The table was set, the food laid out, a feast by any standard, or so I thought. "What is this?" Lily asked, eyeing the spread with a mix of curiosity and disdain. "It's dinner," I said, trying to keep the annoyance out of my voice. "Mom's recipes. Thought it'd be nice to have a taste of home." Jack dug in, praising the flavors, but Lily pushed her food around her plate, barely taking a bite. "It's quaint," she finally said, her tone implying anything but. I clenched my jaw, feeling my temper rise. "Quaint?" I echoed, my voice sharper than I intended. "It's home cooking. Real food, not some overpriced dish from a fancy restaurant." Jack shot me a look, a silent plea to keep the peace, but I was past caring. "What's wrong, Lily? Not to your taste?" Lily set her fork down, her lips a thin line. "I just prefer food with a more refined palate," she said, each word dripping with condescension. The meal ended in awkward silence, the unspoken words hanging heavy between us. It was clear Lily and I were from two different worlds, and neither of us was willing to bridge that gap. Life had a way of throwing curveballs, but nothing could have prepared me for the news that shattered the ordinary flow of my days. Mr. Harrison, Lily's grandfather, had been involved in a serious car accident. I remember standing in my kitchen when Jack called. The moment I heard his voice, thick with emotion, I knew something was terribly wrong. "Sarah, it's Mr. Harrison, he didn't make it," Jack said in a strangled voice. My heart sank, and for a moment, I couldn't speak. Mr. Harrison had been like a second grandfather to me, always there with a story or a joke, his eyes twinkling with mirth. "We need to be there for Mrs. Harrison. She's all alone now," I finally said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Yeah, I know. The funeral's tomorrow. Can you believe it?" "Just like that, he's gone," Jack replied, the pain in his voice mirroring my own. The day of the funeral was a blur, a procession of faces and condolences that seemed to blend together in a haze of grief. The Harrisons' home, usually a beacon of warmth and laughter, felt cold and empty, the air heavy with loss. Mrs. Harrison, the rock of her family, looked small and fragile, her eyes lost in sorrow. But what struck me was the undercurrent of conversation that had nothing to do with mourning or loss. "I heard he left everything to her," whispered one distant relative to another, not even bothering to lower their voice enough. "Yeah, but what's going to happen now? Who's going to take care of everything?" came the reply, laced with greed rather than concern. The audacity of such talk, at such a time, made my blood boil. Was there no respect for the man who had just passed? For the woman who had lost her partner of so many years? It was then that Lily found me, her expression one of irritation rather than sorrow. "Sarah, what are you even doing here? You're not family. Maybe it's time you left," she said, her words sharp and unwelcome. I looked at her, incredulous. "I'm here to support Mrs. Harrison, just like everyone else. Or at least, that's what I thought we were all here for," I shot back, my patience wearing thin. Lily scoffed, rolling her eyes. "Please, like you being here makes any difference. Just go home, Sarah." With a heavy heart, I decided to leave, not wanting to cause a scene. But as I walked away, the snippets of conversation about assets and inheritance continued to echo in my ears, a stark reminder of the greed that often lurked just beneath the surface of familial bonds. The day after the funeral, my phone rang, slicing through the silence of my home. The screen displayed Mrs. Harrison's number, and I answered immediately, my voice thick with concern. "Sarah, dear, could you come over? I need to talk to someone." Mrs. Harrison's voice trembled through the line, her usual strength buried under layers of grief and fatigue. "Of course, Mrs. Harrison. I'll be right there," I replied, my heart aching for the woman who had suddenly found herself alone in the world. Arriving at her doorstep, I was greeted by a sight that tugged at my heartstrings. Mrs. Harrison stood there, a shadow of her former self, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. Without a word, she ushered me inside, into the living room where so many of our neighborhood's memories had been made. "Thank you for coming, Sarah. It seems you're one of the few who truly cares," she began, her voice laced with a sorrow that resonated deep within me. "It's what neighbors are for, Mrs. Harrison. How are you holding up?" I asked, though the question felt inadequate against the magnitude of her loss. She sighed, a long, weary exhalation that seemed to carry the weight of the world. "As well as can be expected, I suppose. But it's not just the loneliness, Sarah. It's everything else. The vultures circling, if you know what I mean." I nodded, understanding all too well the ugly side of human nature that tragedy often revealed. "I've heard some talk," I admitted, my tone grim. "People can be so cruel, greedy? Yes, they can. And they are," Mrs. Harrison cut in, her words sharp with a bitterness that surprised me. "But that's not why I asked you here." She paused, gathering her thoughts, and when she continued, her voice was steadier, imbued with a resolve that belied her frail appearance. "My husband left everything to me, Sarah. The house, the savings, everything. And now, everyone's got their eyes on what they think they're owed." I reached out, placing a comforting hand over hers. "But it's your right, Mrs. Harrison. He wanted you to have it." "Yes, he did. And I intend to honor his wishes. But, Sarah, there's something else." She hesitated, her gaze locking with mine, a silent plea for understanding. "I need someone I can trust, someone outside this madness. And I think that's you." Before I could respond, the sound of the front door slamming echoed through the house, and footsteps approached. Lily appeared in the doorway, her eyes narrowing as they landed on me. "What are you doing here?" she demanded, her tone as cold as ice. "I was just checking on Mrs. Harrison," I replied, my patience wearing thin at her constant hostility. Lily scoffed, dismissing my words with a wave of her hand. "Well, you've checked. Now leave. We have family matters to discuss." Mrs. Harrison stood up, her stature small, but her presence commanding. "Lily, Sarah is here because I invited her. She's been more of a family to me lately than my own blood." The tension in the room was palpable, a standoff between the grieving widow and the entitled granddaughter-in-law. But before the situation could escalate further, I decided to take the high road. "I'll go, Mrs. Harrison. But please, call me if you need anything at all," I said, offering her a reassuring smile. In the 6 months following the uncomfortable confrontation at Mrs. Harrison's, my life seemed to drift back into a semblance of normalcy, at least on the surface. The once frequent visits to Mrs. Harrison's home ceased almost entirely. Whenever I tried calling her, I was met with the cold, impersonal tone of a disconnected line. Jack and Lily, meanwhile, became distant figures, their lives seemingly moving on without a backward glance towards me. Jack even went as far as to tell me not to call him anymore, a request that stung more than I cared to admit. One evening, I saw Mrs. Harrison and Lily near my house. The sight of Mrs. Harrison shocked me. The vibrant, spirited woman I remembered had been replaced by someone much frilier, her face drawn and pale, her body seemingly weighed down by more than just age. "Mrs. Harrison, what happened? Are you all right?" I asked, my concern mounting at the sight of her. Lily, ever the gatekeeper, was quick to answer. "We're making some repairs at the house. It's going to be dusty, and I don't want Grandma breathing all that in. Thought she could stay with you for a bit," she explained, her tone suggesting this was more of an imposition than a request. Despite the surprise, I didn't hesitate. "Of course, she can stay here. For as long as she needs," I said, turning to Mrs. Harrison with a reassuring smile. Lily didn't waste any time. Almost immediately, she brought over a few small bags containing Mrs. Harrison's essentials. "The repairs should only take a couple of months. I'll give you a call when it's all clear for her to come back," she said, her voice carrying a finality that suggested the topic was not open for discussion. The moment Mrs. Harrison crossed the threshold into my home, something shifted. It wasn't just a physical move from one place to another, it was as if she was stepping out of a shadow that had held her captive far too long. When she sat down, the dam broke, and her tears flowed freely, each one a testament to the silent struggles she'd endured. Wrapped in a hug, Mrs. Harrison's voice was muffled, but her words were clear enough to send a chill down my spine. "I've been living like a prisoner, Sarah. Couldn't step outside without asking, like I'm some kind of hostage in my own home. Night after night, those parties, the noise. And there's no repairs, none. It's all a sham. Lily, she wants me gone." Hearing her speak, my heart sank. Mrs. Harrison, the woman who'd always greeted me with a smile, had been suffering in silence, tormented in what should have been her sanctuary. "This is unbelievable," I found myself saying, anger simmering beneath my shock. "We should call the cops, Mrs. Harrison. They need to know about this." But she shook her head, a determined glint in her weary eyes. "No, dear. I've got a plan. A better one. But I need your help. Can you call my lawyer? Ask him to come here?" Her request took me aback, but I nodded. "Of course, I'll call him first thing." As promised, I reached out to her lawyer, a man Mrs. Harrison had trusted for years. When he arrived, I offered them privacy, stepping away as they delved into discussions I wasn't privy to. Their murmured conversation, though inaudible, was a clear sign of the wheels of justice beginning to turn. Months had passed since Mrs. Harrison moved into my home, and the so-called repairs on her house showed no signs of progress. The silence on Lily's end was deafening, and my patience was wearing thin. Mrs. Harrison, for all her gratitude for my shelter, carried a sadness in her eyes that spoke volumes of the situation's toll on her. One evening, as Mrs. Harrison and I sat in the living room, a rare moment of peace enveloping us, I decided it was time to address the elephant in the room. "Mrs. Harrison, something's not right. There's been no word from Lily, and your house, it looks untouched. Are you sure there's really repairs going on?" I asked, the concern evident in my voice. She sighed, a deep, weary sound that seemed to carry the weight of her worries. "I've had my doubts, dear. But what can I do? I'm just an old lady, and they've made it clear I'm not welcome in my own home." Her words stirred something within me, a fierce determination I hadn't known I possessed. "Well, I'm not just going to sit back and watch this happen. It's time we found out what's really going on," I declared, my resolve hardening. The following day, I made my way to Mrs. Harrison's house. The sight that greeted me was exactly as I had feared. The house was silent, no workers in sight, no signs of any ongoing repairs. Just as I was about to leave, Lily and Jack pulled up in their car. The look on Lily's face when she saw me was a mix of surprise and irritation. "Sarah, what are you doing here? Spying on us now?" Lily snapped, her tone accusatory. "I'm not spying. I'm looking for answers. Mrs. Harrison deserves to know what's happening with her house," I shot back, my patience wearing thin. Jack, who had been silent up to this point, finally spoke up. "Look, Sarah, this doesn't concern you. Just leave it be." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Doesn't concern me? Mrs. Harrison is living with me because you two claimed her house needed repairs. But I don't see any repairs happening." Lily rolled her eyes, clearly unimpressed. "Well, plans change. We've decided to do the repairs later. Grandma can stay with you a bit longer. That's not your decision to make. It's her house, her life. You can't just uproot her because it's convenient for you," I retorted, anger boiling within me. Jack stepped forward, trying to play the mediator. "Sarah, let's just calm down and talk about this. We don't want to make a scene." "A scene? You're the ones making a scene of her life. I won't stand by and watch you treat Mrs. Harrison like this," I declared, standing my ground. The conversation went back and forth, but my mind was made up. Mrs. Harrison had been through enough, and it was time someone took a stand for her. The next day, my phone rang. The screen flashed Lily's name and a knot formed in my stomach before I even answered. What she asked next sent shockwaves through me. Look, I need a favor. Big one. Confirm grandma's lost it, mentally. Say she needs to be in a home. I'll make it worth your while, 10 grand. Lily's voice was all business, cold and calculating. I felt my blood boil. Are you out of your mind? You think I'd sell out Mrs. Harrison like that? For money? I was seething, barely containing my anger. Just think about it, okay? It's easy money, she pressed, clearly not understanding the gravity of her request. Think about it? No, you listen, and you listen good. This is sick, Lily. Don't you ever ask me to do something like this again. Ever. I snapped back, my words laced with disgust. I ended the call, my hands trembling with rage. How could she? How could anyone be so heartless? When I told Mrs. Harrison about the call, I expected anger, maybe shock. But she just nodded, her expression resigned. I'm not surprised, dear. It's been clear to me for a while now, they see me as nothing more than an inconvenience. An obstacle to their greed. Her calmness in the face of such betrayal was both heartbreaking and infuriating. They don't deserve you, Mrs. Harrison. Not a bit, I said, my voice thick with emotion. It's all right, Sarah. I've made my peace with it. In fact, I've already taken steps to ensure they can't harm me further, she revealed, a hint of defiance in her tone. What do you mean? I asked, curious despite the heaviness in my heart. I've transferred everything, my house, my savings, all of it, to you. Left just enough for myself to cover a stay in a nice nursing home, one that I picked out. But after what Lily just tried to pull. Maybe I rushed that decision, she explained, her eyes searching mine for understanding. I was floored. Mrs. Harrison, why me? You barely know me. Because you showed me kindness when they showed me greed. You offered me a home when they tried to take mine away. You're my family now, Sarah, in every way that matters, she said, her voice steady and sincere. The weight of her words, of her trust, was overwhelming. You don't have to go to any home, not if you don't want to. Stay here, with me. We'll figure this out together, I offered, more determined than ever to protect her. Mrs. Harrison smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes. I'd like that very much, dear. Thank you. The day Mrs. Harrison asked me to gather all her relatives at the lawyer's office, I knew we were on the cusp of a seismic shift. I sent out the invitations, including to my brother, Jack, and his wife, Lily, whose actions had precipitated this whole affair. As we entered the lawyer's office on the day, the air was thick with tension, the kind you could cut with a knife. Mrs. Harrison, frail but fierce in her determination, held on to my arm, drawing strength from my presence. Once everyone was seated, the lawyer began, but it was Mrs. Harrison who took control of the room. I brought you all here to announce my decision, she started, her voice stronger than I'd heard in months. Over the past few years, I've seen true colors shown, care withheld, and greed run rampant in this family. There was an audible shift in the room, discomfort and denial mingling in the charged atmosphere. I have decided to disinherit my daughter, my son, and my grandchildren, she continued, each word deliberate, her gaze unwavering. The only person who has shown me kindness and decency is Sarah. She's my heir. Jack and Lily's faces turned a shade of red I hadn't seen before, their outrage palpable. Murmurs of disbelief and anger bubbled up among the relatives, but Mrs. Harrison wasn't finished. Furthermore, I demand financial compensation from Lily and Jack for the distress they've caused me and for them to vacate my house immediately, she added, the lawyer nodding in agreement beside her. You can't do this to us. Your family. Lily shrieked, her voice shrill with desperation. Family? Mrs. Harrison echoed, a bitter laugh escaping her lips. This is what family does? No. Sarah has shown me more compassion and respect than any of you. The lawyer, sensing the situation spiraling, stepped in. "If we cannot proceed civilly, I will not hesitate to call the authorities," he warned, his voice a calm in the storm. "Well, we just left. After Mrs. Harrison and I had spent a year and a half as more than just neighbors, but as family, her health took a turn for the worse. It was a tough blow, watching her grow weaker, spending her final days in the hospital. I was there as often as I could manage, holding her hand, talking about everything and nothing, trying to offer comfort in the face of the inevitable. A week after one of those quiet visits, she passed away. I took it upon myself to arrange a proper send-off for her. Despite reaching out through the lawyer to all her relatives, the day of the funeral came and went without a single one of them showing up to pay their respects. On the day of the funeral, my phone rang. It was Lily, the voice on the other end sounding desperate and defeated. I don't know how to say this, but we're in a bad spot. Jack lost his job, and we're behind on everything. Can we live in the house? We've got nowhere else." Her request left me in a tight spot, emotions and memories clashing like thunder. "Lily, you know that was never my decision to make. Mrs. Harrison made her choices clear, and they were about more than just a roof over your head. It was about respect, love, something you all seem to forget. But we're family," she protested weakly, the argument sounding hollow even to her ears. "Family?" I echoed, the word bitter on my tongue. "Family doesn't do what you did. She needed you, and you turned your back. You made your choice, Lily. Now, you have to live with it." Ending the call, I felt a mix of anger and sorrow. It wasn't just about the house or the money, it was about the values Mrs. Harrison stood for, the lessons she taught me about kindness, integrity, and standing up for what's right.